Professional chess master, all rats at chess.com. I'm here to analyze a game submitted by Jumbodog. This is in my member best game thread, and he's got a lot of comments here, and that helps me a little bit because I can answer some of his questions. And he says in the thread he felt he played a pretty good game here. He's been working on the whole idea of positional play lately, and there was a moment or two that I just made a couple of improvements. This wasn't as long as I like to play. It was game 30, but I still feel I did okay. Yes, you did. And he won after all. The opening was out of any book or master game by move 2. Well, that's wonderful news. I'll throw that in, which made it a whole lot of fun. I know very little about openings, but I do happen to play 1d4 every time I have white, so I was happy to see it. Here I still had a lot of ideas about what I should be doing that came in handy and also helped me realize the mistakes I made in post-mortem analysis. I was glad to see this. I'm typically a d4 player, so I felt comfortable walking into this game with this start, but it took an unorthodox turn soon into it. Okay, so he plays d4. White plays d4 and he answers d5, and here's the move. Okay, how many times does this come up in the games I've done in this member best game thread? If you're watching all the videos, you'll see it quite a bit. Not usually this early, and it comes up a lot in the Team 45 leagues. Guys, stop making this move. Stop, okay? It's not doing you any good. Period. It's giving you losing games. What do you have to do? You all know the answer. Develop a piece. Get them out. Okay. There's no need to keep a black piece out of G4. None whatsoever. Let them go there. All right. And I've proved it in many cases. Okay. So he says I didn't understand this move other than him limiting my typically bad light squared bishop in the Queen's Gambit decline Slav openings. I still thought we were going to transpose into something like that. Okay. So how do you answer a move like that? You develop. Yeah, just develop your pieces. Okay, now white plays knight c3. So black could almost play c5 here, and this can become a Chigorin defense with colors reversed. Chigorin defense to the Queen's Gambit declined with colors reversed, where white has spent the tempo h3. And there's some lines where in a normal Chigorin where white wants to play bishop g5, and that's going to be stopped, and that's kind of beyond the scope of this, but it's definitely possible and require further analysis. You have to know that opening, and to sit here and show it to you would just be a waste of time. But it's kind of interesting sometimes how you can get colors reversed openings just out of thin air. And anyway, it might not have been a bad move, but what he plays is fine. Why? It's a developing move, of course. Well, anytime you develop, I'm happy. Doesn't have to be a book move. Okay, so bishop f4, good. Now, this is interesting. The way this game now goes is kind of interesting, and I'm going to be able to help help black a lot with some of his feelings and opinions about this type of position. What's the best way for white to continue? Okay, I mean for black to continue. Well, to develop. Okay, so black plays knight c6 here. It's not a bad move. It's a developing move. But what's the first priority after development? What do we normally want to do? We want to get our king castled. Why do we want our king? Why do we want our king castled? So he doesn't sit in the center of the board and doesn't get displaced, so that it assures that we get our kingside pieces developed, and we get our rooks closer to becoming connected. This is why. Okay, so nothing wrong with knight c6, but a better move would be to play e6. Now because that opens up the diagonal for the king's bishop and lets it come out, and black can castle. Now, as a result of playing knight c6, black gets into a few things he's uncomfortable with and has to kind of figure his way out, and we'll see when we get there. So had he played e6, this would have all been avoided, and we'll see here in a moment. Okay, So he says he felt comfortable playing this because he obviously wasn't playing c4. After the game I was going over it, I should have probably just played c5 here. Is that still my best option to challenge his center? Reverse Sicilian-ish maybe. But the real reason comes into play later when my c-pawn is stuck behind my knight and starts to cause me issues. Okay. Well, good points there. You didn't necessarily need to play c5. What the priority, you can save that move for later and get it in later. What the priority should be is development. Okay. Let's just take a look at this move c5. Okay. White can take it, but he probably won't. But then you have to figure out how you're going to retake it. Are you going to put the queen on a5 and then take it? Or are you going to move the pawn to e6 and take with the bishop? Or which one are you going to do? Okay. But if you play e6, you're ready to play c5, and you don't have to worry about how you're going to retake it. You take by developing the bishop. There's nothing wrong with the plan of c5. I was suggesting to play e6 and develop your king bishop, okay, and get castled. But if you want to play c5, that's fine too. But just make sure you get castled so your rooks get connected. So anyway, knight c6. Let's see how it goes. Now why isn't it? There it goes. Okay, e3. Now, here, black commits a crime. Okay? Black plays a6. Now, that's just as bad as white's h3. Don't play this move. Okay? You're afraid of something going to b5. And you needn't worry about it at all. I will show you. Okay? Okay, here's a comment. I didn't want to deal with the pawn structure issues after he played bishop b5 and bishop takes c6. Okay, that's what you're afraid of. Does that, number one, does that mean that black or white's going to play that? No, it doesn't. Okay, so let's look at what you should do. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to show you why you don't need to worry about it at all. Okay, e6. Now this is what you're suggesting. Okay, while he's doing that, go develop something. Let's develop this bishop. Okay, now here it comes. Now you don't want issues with your double pawns. What's white going to do? Develop? Look at this. Boom. Problem solved. And look, your king bishop's out and you're ready to castle. Isn't that better than getting into the little fix you got into? Now let's back it up. How can white improve on this? And let's see if it's worthwhile. Okay, suppose white wants to play knight a5 to stop c5. Well, big deal. Just castle. Now if he plays knight c5, you can come back with knight d7. Now you're crawling on that square. Suppose he tries b4. Well, fine. Let him. a5, a3. You've got targets over here. You've got activity. You've got this c4 square, and you can utilize it. You can start attacking his pawns. Now, if you feel a little uncomfortable with this because the pawns are getting locked up, don't worry. There's a remedy. I'm just kind of showing you some possible lines. Okay, now you're going to get c4 here. White better get developed. Okay, let's just go knock this guy out of there, right? Actually, wait. Where's this pawn? I want to put the knight on f3 so that I can get to d2. Okay. Now, you don't have to play this, but I'm just doing it. Now you both have a set of double pawns. White better get developed. Let's get him castled. Okay, now, hey, we got threats. There's a pawn we can attack. Okay, let's develop the queen and safeguard it. And, oh wait, we can't put the queen there. It hangs it. Look at that bishop on f5. Okay, I'll put the queen here. Now my rooks aren't connected. Looks to me like black's got a pretty active position here. Now let's back up. Let's just avoid double pawns for you altogether. Okay? Let's put the bishop here. And since this is what you're afraid of, let it fly. Okay, what's he going to do? A6 or A3? Is that what he's going to do? The point being, if bishop B4, here, I'll just show you. Or bishop A5, B4, bishop B3, or bishop B6. Let's get the notation right, Bill. Okay, knight A5, fine. If he takes, you take back with the C pawn, and you're ready to push C5. And if he doesn't take, you start the counterplay against his pawns. Okay, now you're threatening some similar stuff. There's really nothing to fear about getting these double pawns, and there's no guarantee that white's even going to do this. But you can avoid this whole mess by not playing knight c6. But playing knight c6 led you to playing a6, and you've returned the favor. Folks, do not play moves like this. Okay? Under any circumstance. In the opening, get developed. All right. End of story. So, look at white. Same thing. Fine. Okay. Time for e6. All right. Knight f3. Now, you know his knight wants to come to e5, he says, but I wasn't sure what to do about it. I thought this was my best option. His best option, he plays bishop d6. This was going to play knight d7, then f6 when he brought his knight there. But I'm paranoid about moving my f-pawn early when planning to castle kingside. Okay, so let's answer those questions. Now, you do need to get developed. So stopping to move knight d7 isn't really worth it, okay? It isn't. Because you've got to get developed. So your choices, let's see, what did you play? You played bishop d6, and this is fine. Your alternative was like you said, to play knight d7 and kick it out. Well, I don't think you have to worry about anything about any weakness in your kingside position, because white isn't developed and ready to take advantage of anything. It potentially weakens e6, but it's not a square that black can easily attack. So you don't need to fear this. But if you're concerned about him coming to e5, if that's your concern, then the question is, did you do the right thing? I say you did. Okay, now knight e5. Now here's where I think you made a mistake, and you're correct in your saying avoiding knight takes e5 because he takes back with the pawn. What you need to do right now, let me finish. You sadly lose your good bishops, but it's your good bishop on d6, but it's better than losing a piece. Okay, here's what you need to do right now. Castle. Always, always, always focus on development. Okay? What are you afraid of? This double pawn thing again? Fine. White's got some problems here. Okay? What are his problems? You're threatening to double his pawns. What's white going to do? Are you afraid of b4? Saddling you with these pawns? Go double his. Okay? Now, you've got two pieces developed and you're castled. White is not castled. White has one piece out. You can develop your queen with tempo. Now you're attacking a pawn. How's he going to guard it? If he guards it with his queen to d2, you may have this move coming up. Now you've got play here. a5. You're threatening to win a pawn. If he pushes by with b5, you break with c5. And there's another pawn back here that's going to be coming up here in a minute. So you don't have anything to fear about b4. So what's he going to do? Take with the bishop? Well, look, problem solved. Take back with your pawn. Now you're ready to break with e5 or c5. Take your pick. And look, you're developed. Your king is castled. You've still got two minor pieces out and castled. White has one minor piece out and is not castled. You've got a terrific game here. You did not have to take on e5. Always, always, always consider developing moves. Okay? If you develop, everything's fine. Don't worry about the little deficiencies in your position. I've just showed you. Just analyze and say you got nothing to fear. You have absolutely nothing to fear. Okay. So bishop takes e5. And, oops. Wait, you didn't castle. That's why it won't do it. Bishop takes e5. And he takes back with the pawn, right? And let's see what happens next. Now you have to cover things. Well, you know, the way you're playing it, though, you are winning a pawn. So maybe I'm being a little overly critical. But I don't think you need to collect pawns in the opening. I think you need to develop, because then more things come up. How is White going to save that pawn? I think the answer is he isn't. Okay? So you are winning a pawn, but do you really need to win a pawn now? Why not get all your pieces developed and win 2 pawns? Or more. That's my logic. Always focus on development. So unless I'm missing something, how does White save that pawn? I don't see how he does. What am I missing? It's twice attacked. You can't play queen d4. You're saying that bishop d3 lets you win the pawn, but I don't see how you stop it. Okay, so now you took his bishop so that you don't get double pawns. He takes back, and now you grab the pawn. So you've won a pawn. So now you should be winning, but look here. See? In some of these positions I was analyzing, you were a couple of tempos up. Here you've taken a couple tempos to win a pawn. And you know you're going to still have to work for your win. If you have your pieces out, the win may come quicker. If you develop, you'll soon find this to be true. Okay, so but White makes a lot of strategic errors here, and this just gives you this wonderful square c4 for the knight. How's White going to get rid of that knight? The only chance is at some point to play b3, but and he probably should do it now. Instead, he ties his queen down to guard a pawn. But at least he's developing. And then finally we get castled, and White castles. Now I think your b5 was premature here, because you're giving yourself a backward pawn on the open file. And you're also not... Okay, because you do correctly say after b5, when he played b4, he should have kicked you with b3. But knight here is just a fine move. Okay, you're preparing to plop the knight in there, although he can probably drive you out. Maybe let's see, maybe, but you're trying to induce him to playing b4 right now. Then you don't push the c pawn. You maintain your pawn structure compact. Okay, just come back. You know, don't go into b3. You might get stuck. And we just take a little maneuvering time, redeploy this knight, and anchor the pawn structure with c6, and you've got that permanent outpost on c4. And with a little bit of maneuvering, the knight can go to either f5 from e7. It could go to f5 or c8 and come into d6. And if White ever remaneuvers his knight to take your knight, you just take back with the knight, and you've got that permanent knight that he's not getting rid of ever, unless he gives up the exchange. Okay? Rook takes knight. So knight a5 stops him from playing b3, but you played let me get this back one. When you play b5, he could play b3, and now your work has got to recommence. Okay? Suddenly, White starts getting developed here. Okay, now there's discovered threats. This knight is loose. Okay, you've got to cover things. Queen d7. Now maybe he comes queen c2. Now there's more threats. discovered threats. Knight takes this pawn. Let's just burn a move and we'll see if this is viable. Knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. You're going to win back a pawn, but he's getting active. See? Now there's a threat on the knight. How are you going to deal with that? Knight d7, and this game looks very equal. Now you don't have to waste a move with h6. I'm just doing this to show you what white is threatening. So you see, you gave white some play, but white didn't see the possibilities. Now, generally, white won't see possibilities like this with the rating, and necessarily you might not either. But if you just follow kind of simple rules and don't give yourself weaknesses, because b5 weakened your position. If you don't give yourself weaknesses, these opportunities won't arise. With that pawn back on b7, white has no play like that whatsoever. Okay? So b4, and after b4, your knight's permanent, and you don't have to worry about any problems on c7 or the c file. But there's one drawback, though. The drawback is the pawn that you're ahead is now a backward pawn, and it's not helping. You're going to have to break the stranglehold. You get rid of that pawn on d4 or b4 in order to utilize your pawn. So your pawn ahead is not so much a pawn ahead anymore. Okay, it's kind of a liability. You could even give white a pawn on c2 right here. Just imagine a white pawn sitting on this square. You know, white would be in the same boat, except you're utilizing your outpost here, and he's not utilizing his outpost. Okay, so you have ways to break them up, and you found it. But I'm not sure if that's you're still quite ready for it. See, you're hanging this pawn when you do it. You got to watch that stuff. This move is coming when you're ready. Why not do what I say? Okay, what do I always say? You know the answer. Starts with a D. Develop. Let's get this queen developed. Okay. Now you're planning to put the rook over here on b8 and prepare a5. So always, always, always get your development complete. I know you want to do stuff with your other pieces, but when you have all your pieces out, they're going to help out. They'll be ready to help out. If they're sitting at home, they're not going to be ready to help out. Okay? And if you look at some of these games, like look at the game just ahead of this, the one that Cat Nc414 played, she got her pieces out, and all of a sudden everything started happening. And she didn't even get them all out because her opponent was messing his position up, but she won that game quick simply because she got her pieces out where they could start working. The first square they go to is just a launching pad. The next square they go to, they start making threats, especially if your opponent's lagging in development. So a5 was premature. Whoop. Get the queen back up. Finish your development first. Okay? And see, there goes a pawn. You didn't have to give up that pawn. And let's see. I think I rushed this capture after blundering my c pawn. I'm pretty sure he played inaccurately. He should have gone straight for, or he should have gone straight for e5 to relieve the pressure on the c pawn. Okay, so let's see. You've got some pressure here. So what you played, I think it's true. He can take this. I think. Let's see. How do we want to take it? Why not just take it with a queen? We have to be careful though. Okay. Let's have a look. Okay. Now at least you're getting your queen developed. Now we've got to be careful here with white, simply because this knight is guarding this bishop, and then nothing's protecting the knight. So maybe this is a time to play a4. That secures the knight in there. Although retreating the bishop is not out of the question. Well, let's see. You're crawling all over a3, and he can't retake. Yeah, just take tempo the queen and play a4. And now this is a potential target for him. The threat is to play a move like bishop. Well, not yet. If you want to attack this pawn with the bishop, it's got to get there by way of e1. That means the bishop will find its way back to g3. The f pawn will advance, and the bishop will come back to f1 or e1. But this looks pretty equal now, but your opponent didn't see it. Okay, so what your opponent played was, I gotta find it here on the PGN, a4. He did the right move, but a move late. Okay, so a4. Now you played e5, and now you had this solid pawn structure in the center. See, look at these center pawns. When is this bishop ever going to bother any of those? The answer is not now, not until they start advancing. Okay, but you've got to cover this. So it's one of the drawbacks with how you played this. You're going to have to go ahead and do this. Okay, it's not a bad move. It does keep him out of c7. So maybe here, I think probably he should just give up his bishop. It's not doing him much good, and I'll show you why. Just give up the bishop. Just take a moment, get rid of that knight. Okay, that knight was a pest. Okay, what's White accomplished by doing this? Well, you may not be able to keep a knight on c4 if it returns there, because he's gotten rid of his bishop. Eventually his knight can oppose it. The question is, by White opening up the game, has White gained anything? See, White is 1/2 tempo ahead in development here. Look at the back rank. Except for the queen, they're a match. The kings and the rooks match. But the black queen is still not developed. Okay? So, and it's White's move. So White has time to develop another piece here. How can White develop another piece and make it effective? Okay, we have a weak pawn here, and we have a potential weak pawn here. So suppose White, instead of playing rook b1, suppose White plays rook fc1. Now there's a threat to take this pawn, and you need to deal with it. How are you going to deal with it? You can either advance it or you can protect it. If you protect it with rook c8, maybe White can generate some counterplay running this pawn up the board. That's kind of tricky. You've given him some options. If you play c6, it's still a backward pawn on the open file, and White will just keep the pressure up. Now you've got to defend it. Okay. Now let's see. Suppose you play queen. There's a reason for going to d6, is to keep d7 clear for the knight. Now White plays knight b3. Now White's ready to occupy a square that he couldn't get to earlier. Okay. So you don't have time to play pawn to c5 here. You've got to retreat a little bit here, play knight d7. Now you're getting ready to play c5, and you're keeping the white knight out of here. Has White made any progress here? Well, maybe a little bit, but you had to play accurately to get to this position. The b4 pawn is covered. If you push c5, d5 might become a target. Your work's cut out for you here. Okay, so let's back it up. Now you've seen that line. It's one of the drawbacks with what you did, and your opponent helped you out. Okay, your opponent didn't play what he should have. He lost the tempo. Okay, bishop g3, and now your idea of supporting that square is good. If he just changes his mind and takes, you want to take back with a pawn and not give him a chance to get rid of that crappy bishop. And then here you're glad to see this because you can now trap his bishop. In other words, restrict its mobility a lot. Now e4 would be premature. White can play f5, reactivating it. So how you did it was fine. You took here, and now you play you took that first. Yeah, you have to deal with the knight. Now you shut it in. So now you've got your permanent knight anchored on c4. You basically have everything you want. White's missed his chance to get some play, and it's your game now. Okay, so he retreats the bishop, trying to get it activated. And here you note he's helping you here. Yes, he is. You were planning rook e8 anyway. Now he's just forcing you to do it. And now you make a note. You spent 2 or 3 minutes here wondering what to do. Well, you have a good move. I mean, the move you play is good, but you had a better move. What you played was queen f6. And there's nothing wrong with it. You're finally getting your queen developed. Okay. But you have a great move here. Rook e3. That's just a tremendous move. It attacks the queen and secures your pawn on b3. Yeah, it gives this pawn up, but you can live with that without that pawn. Okay, maybe that's your concern. Strategically, you have a very, very wonderful position here. Let's just go bother that rook. Where are you going to put it? Later, White puts the rook on a2, leaving his back rank kind of vulnerable. But you've got just so many active pieces, and White's not getting anything by collecting that pawn. But again, what you did was fine, but then White misplayed it. Oops, let's get this here. You played queen f6. Now, what White should do is, even though it costs a pawn, he should get rid of this nuisance pawn. But unfortunately, you're going to take on d4 with check, and then you got 2 new pass pawns. So, but White's just lost, as I said. And now here you might have tried to playing him in reverse order, but I felt that the move this way had more immediate pressure, as my queen wasn't doing much on d8 where she started. Yeah, she was always where she started until you finally got it developed. Not being critical, just reminding you. Just don't worry about other operations. Get the pieces out. Just don't worry about them. Nothing wrong with developing. If your opponent suddenly finds a tactical win, well, then I was wrong in that case. But chances are your opponent won't find a tactical win. But if you develop, chances are the person that finds a tactical win will be you. Okay, so rook e2 or c6. You still should have played rook e3. But he allows you to do it anyway. Finally, here it comes. Queen f1, and here your opponent blunders rook a2. You basically have a knockout punch right here that unfortunately you missed. Maybe you're short of time. But what does White do against rook ae8? What does he do? You're threatening to pin his queen against his king. And even if you don't pin his queen, let's get out of that danger. King h2. Well, I'm going there anyway. Where are you going now? Well, it looks like you have to come up here. Hey, look. I make a queen. Is that a knockout punch? I think so. What can White do? I don't know. But you had a knockout punch right there. You know, but you have a luxury. Anything you play is probably winning, unless you're hanging something. So the move you play is fine. You're still threatening to make a queen, but you give him a chance to hold on, and he just blocks the queening square. Well, you know what? You still have the same move. There it is. What's he going to do? Rook here to stop it. Well, just park your rook on the 7th rank. There's nothing wrong with that, right? You've got a tremendous game. White can't do anything. He's hogtied. you're probably going to mate him here shortly. There's just nothing you can do about it. So, okay, so let's see. What did you play? Okay, so the drawback with that was you're sticking your rooks behind your pawn. You know, he's got the pawn blockaded, and you've kind of reduced the mobility of your rooks. Your rook was fine on e3. And it says here, aside from his next move, the blunder, I think I'm winning here. Yes, you've been winning for several moves. All of his pieces are tied down to attacking my pawn, and my queen is free to roam as she pleases. If he plays bishop a3 to try to add one more attacker, then queen takes d4, solves that problem and pins his rook to his king. I was planning to simply, bring my queen to the e file and then march her straight up the board to e3. Good idea. But then, okay, we'll see what the better then. Well, I don't know if White can play bishop a3. Don't you just take it? Yeah, he'll get your pawn, but you're going to be a piece up. Okay, so let's see what happens. Is this rook? No. That's one problem with this chess.com PGN. You play a sideline and it makes it the main line. Okay, I gotta go back. Rook queen b1, rook b8. Okay, rook eb3. Okay, now what does he do? I gotta scroll down here. He played rook f1. Then you say it's a blunder. Well, you know what? Actually, it isn't a blunder. I know that may surprise you, but I was looking at this position, and White has some resources. They're kind of surprising. Knight d2, White resigned here, right? White has some surprising resources. Let me see, what was it? Or maybe it was before rook f1. Yeah, this is where it was. No? Wait a minute. I got to think of this. I just looked at this before, and I've talked for 37 minutes on this video, and now I'm forgetting what his resource was. I mean, I know what his resource is. I'm just trying to figure out how we got there. Let's see. Okay, let me think. Come back here. You give up the queen, which seems to be a surprise. Well, it's not working. Oh, wait. No. I know what it is. I think I know what it is. Let's see. Darn it. It makes me mad when I can't remember. I mean, I know what it is, because I spent some time and it sure worked the first time I looked at it. It's the fact that White can sacrifice his queen and mess you up in a surprising way. And that's what I have to stop and remember. Let's see. Be8, rook f1, rook e2. Oh, that was a sideline. Rook f1, rook f3. Knight d2, White resigns. Okay, how does see the whole secret behind this? Okay, I got to remember how to get there. Do you see this rook on b8? Imagine if, just forget everything else on the board. Imagine if that is a White rook giving check. Black needs to play king f7, right? And that allows this rook check, this White rook going to f8 check, winning the queen. So White had this funny little resource here, and I'm trying to remember what it was. Let's see. But you allow him to take your queen, and and you collect that rook later. Let's see. Is it this? That doesn't seem to work. Oh, what is it? Makes me mad when I can't remember this. Darn it, darn it, darn it. I know I looked at it and it was staring me right in the face. And sometimes, you know, you get the same problem and you can't remember it. You know, you see it one time, then you can't solve it the next. Just a little case of chess blindness. I mean, this certainly looks crushing. So how does White deal with this? The way to deal with it was to give up the queen, and then get the rook down to b8, or threaten to get the rook down to b8. Then you go collect that knight on b1 later. So maybe it's to move this rook. Okay, but that's not putting enough attackers on b2. Okay, so I want to say rook f3, but I'm wondering about knight takes f3 check. Okay, so here we take this, and we take this, and you're not getting it. Hey, dang, that makes me so mad. Let's see, what about rook takes now? That doesn't do it. What am I missing? Huh? Was it something you could have done earlier? Because let's see, queen b1. You put your rook behind. Let me look at the PGN. Maybe somehow the PGN got messed up. Okay, let's see. Looking at the PGN. Bishop EB3, wait, rook EB3, queen B1, rook EB3. Okay, so that was the next move, the blunder. I think I'm winning here. Yeah, I agree with that. I'm just looking at the PGN here. If he plays, try to black solves the pin. I was planning to simply queen V file, march straight up the board, but then, okay, oh, yeah. Okay, he didn't play rook F1. See, he played rook F3, so I have the wrong position. That's where the problem is. He didn't play rook F1. Okay, so I knew there was a resource here. I just had the wrong position. So, problem solved. Let's see, let's get back to this. Okay, queen B1. Whoop, wrong one. Rook here. Now, he didn't play... Okay. Now we got it. Knight D2. This is the point where black can play on, and it's surprising. Okay, what are you going to do on rook takes B3? What are you going to do? You have two candidate moves. Knight takes B1 and rook takes B3. Let's examine them both in turn. Okay, on knight takes B1, you're going to run right into rook checks. Okay? You run right into it. You see what I was saying? He has this check. Imagine that rook down there. See, I just had the wrong position. That's why I couldn't find it. And now, lo and behold, you lose. White's winning. So let's look at the other candidate move. Remember I said you had two candidate moves. Take the queen or take the rook. So let's take the rook. Now, we take the pawn. We give up the queen. Now, what are your candidate moves? Take the queen or take the rook, right? let's look at take the rook. If you take the rook, the queen takes, and suddenly you're down a pawn. Well, no, you're not down a pawn. This is just an outside pass pawn. So that leaves taking the queen. But here's the subtle point. You take this rook, and now the threat is to play rook b8 check and win the queen. So black has to get out of that. How are we going to do that? Let's just pick a move here. h3, that, or h6. That gives us a flight square. But now white picks up the knight, and white's got his work cut out for him to draw this, but there's drawing potential here. This pawn could be a nuisance if white secures his rook on a3. He may be able to set up a fortress where this king can't get into the white position, and the threat is to run this pawn. So your opponent resigned when he had potential to hold the position. It's kind of amazing, some of these resources that show up. And the only reason I missed it was because I played the wrong move on the board. I put the rook on f1, not on f3. But kind of surprising what we can find, isn't it? But overall, you played a very good game. I mean, we don't expect perfection, okay? You're going to make mistakes. You're going to go from a good game to a poor game and back to a good game again, okay? It's going to happen. What we want to do is have you focus on the key thing, development. And if you next game you play, if you go out there and develop your pieces, then good things are going to happen, okay? So sorry about not getting the right move there. I knew that white had a resource, and the only reason I couldn't find it was because I had the wrong position. But once I opened up the PGN, I saw rook f3, not rook f1. But anyway, thanks everyone for their time, and look forward to talking to you in the next video. Take care.